Hey, welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Today I'm wrestling with my personal Turbo 400 for my 72 Nova Twin Turbo LS project. Today I fought with the pan, the shifter bracket, a few temp senders and pressure senders, all necessary steps before I reinstall it in the car. So let's see what I got done to get to this point. I set the transmission specialties 4013 pan on the transmission. Jegs pan is the same pan. So Jegs and transmission specialties, I believe that's where they get all their house brand parts anyway. So they're definitely identical. I've installed two in the last 2 weeks and they're definitely the same. So I got it sitting on there. Got my brackets mocked up. And I really want to run the Winters Sidewinder shifter that I have. Backstory, and yes, I need to buy another decal. The gate stays the same. They make a decal that says neutral 1, 2, 3. So I'll get that. So I paid $80 for the shifter. And it came with the shifter, the cable, and that's it. No brackets, no arm on the transmission. So I bought an install kit. That was $35 maybe. And I also bought the backup light and neutral start switches. So it'll be a complete nice shifter. But as we learned in the last video, their bracket bolts on these two, which isn't going to work with the transmission shield bracket. And the arm's bent wrong. So I started looking through my shifters. Sorry, I keep going back and forth. And I have a Power Glide shifter, which is the quarter stick, Hurst quarter stick in Power Glide. I can run that thing with my eyes shut in the dark. It's great. The 3-speed shifter, forward or reverse pattern, they're two different shifters. I have two reverse pattern 3-speed shifters, but they're kind of clunky. From neutral, you got to squeeze for drive and then let go. You can pull for second, and then you got to squeeze for high. So it would be intuitive once you did it a few times, but I've run the Turbo Action Cheater and the, well, this style used to be in all the fire trucks, so the Winter shifter has been around a long time. So I wanted to run this. So I looked through all my old brackets and stuff, and I came up with an idea. I have a few shifter arms, and this universal one, the distance from here to here and the hole size is correct. The angle of the slot is a little bit different, but I was prepared to work around that. When I decided I'm just going to hammer this offset straight and maybe bend this out a little bit, just like the Turbo Action was, I know that clears the shield outboard. Then I just needed a bracket. So with the transmission in neutral and the shifter in neutral, it's pretty easy to see where it has to be. And also back to the Hurst quarter stick for a minute, I don't have the correct transmission bracket for that either. So either way, I was making a bracket when I came across this. I have two of the 727, I believe, brackets. And the pan space, the bolt hole spacing is correct for the pan on the Turbo 400. So that would have worked, but holding my bracket up to it, it misses by a hole. But this B&M bracket for a 350 or a 400 GM, all you do is drill a couple holes, cut off the excess. I need to slot this similar to this so it clears my shield bracket, no big deal. And that should work. I should be picking up the shop, but instead I was opening the packages that showed up yesterday afternoon. And I recently sold everything from the crankshaft back under the 72 Nova, which is where I am right now. And I had the SFI PRW USA Flexplate with the holes in it that I sold. And while shopping for the replacement, I decided to go solid. It seems to be stronger, in theory, anyway. I actually bought a Hayes, but in the package, which says Hayes on the outside, is the SFI tag stuck to a piece of paper that's PRW USA. So same flex plate, it was the same color. It looked very similar when I took it out, but whatever. Removing the transmission from most any LS project, even an OEM or a swap application, you have to pull the starter to get to the converter bolts. So I shopped around, and for less than $13 with shipping, I bought the Flexplate or flywheel holder that bolts in place of the starter. And that makes it a breeze to torque up the Flexplate bolts. And I'm also was looking for a solution. I had a 5.3 mocked up in here, tried to break the crankshaft bolt loose, and none of my impacts would touch it, so I was going to get a big pipe, but I had no way to hold the engine still, really, so this ought to do the trick. And as a reminder, I run the dished Flexplate, and I weld a .400 hub extension on the end of my traditional Chevrolet torque converter. No adapter required. Plenty of room in the snout for everything to flex without bottoming out. Don't use a slip-on adapter. And the flat plate on the 6-liter with the adapter that goes between the Flexplate and the crankshaft, I run into interference problems with those with aftermarket converters. So I found this to be the best. The dish Flexplate, weld the hub extension on the torque converter, or buy an LS specific torque converter, and no adapter. Once again, the camera doesn't do these justice. They pop up overnight. That one there's 7 or 8 inches wide. Unreal. Yesterday it looked like Epcot. You know, the big white dome. There may be some background noise, and I apologize for that. I got a few machines running, but I was able to take the B&M bracket, had to rebend it a few times, and drill it for the U-clamp arrangement that holds the nice Morse style cable, which I like. Has a quick disconnect end, which is key for adjustment. And then I took the transmission bracket and flattened it out and immediately cracked. Whatever metal this is, you cannot bend it. And I tried to bend this bracket outward and split it as well. But what this did do, it allowed me to hook it up and give me the correct geometry. I can see what has to be done. So now I re-drilled my universal bracket, and with this setup I have the shifter adjusted and working, and now I don't want to have to, due to the way the bracket is close to the shield bolts, I'm going to make a 2-piece bracket, so this will remain attached to the pan, and my shifter bracket will bolt on with 2 small bolts back here. So I can bolt this on, install the pan 100%, install the shield, put this up in the car, and then afterwards easily connect my shifter. So that's the plan. I have the 2-piece bracket mocked up and just vice gripped in place. I know I'm relaxed in neutral. The cable pops right off and on. I had it marked how far out it was this way. I actually made a correction so the cable's perfectly straight. Now I just got to drill 2 holes, and I'll have a 2-piece bracket. It's noisy, but I love the notching. Make short work of thin metal. Alright, the operation was a success. And if you know me, I'll come up with some fancier bolts to hold that on, but it shifts nicely in all positions. I disconnect the cable like I showed you in park, neutral, and, well, high gear, in this case, reverse pattern. The extremes of the shifter position plus the middle, and in every case it goes right off and on the ball stud, no problem. The reason why I wanted a 2-piece bracket, as I've explained, by the time you bolt this bracket on for the shield with the shifter bracket, you really can't take it off because there's spring tension with everything tight, with the lower brackets that go under the pan plus the shield itself. They all are held in place with the conical head 3/8 bolts. And once you get that stuff tight, I like to leave it that way. So in this case, if I put it in the car, I'm going to be disconnecting these to connect the shifter, and it's going to go boing, and I'm going to have trouble getting it back together. This way, I just disconnect it over here. That stays together like I explained, and it works slick. So that shifter is a go. I ordered the correct bracket for the quarter stick as well, but I think I'm going to go with this. My next issue is I'm okay with the Allen bolts, but I don't have the correct length for the sides plus the overflow tank. So I've taken a couple of the 5/16 flange head and reduced the flange in the lathe, temporarily at least for the sides. And these are got a step or recess, so I'd have to machine the flange off all of them if I go to regular bolts, which I probably will because I have bags of them. So that'll be next. I gotta make all my bolts match, because I've even got comments for that asking me if I was, heaven forbid, gonna run 2 different bolts in the pan. People know me, I guess. Before I use the lathe to cut the flange heads off my 5/16 pan bolts, I need to cut about 25 thousandths more off the end of this tube. I'm making several torque converter hub pilot extensions. I normally use a solid. I drill the hole and weld the hole onto the end of the torque converter, but this one's getting short, and the only way for me to pot it off now is in the lathe. I use the jet lathe that has coolant, and I can get a couple more out of this piece. It's a tedious process, and I really don't enjoy it. I enjoy cutting it off a little too long in the bandsaw and then just truing up the small piece in the lathe, because I'm lazy and really not a good machinist. But I have 2 pieces of this. It's 1 3/4, 43/40, and it's so hard I can't really machine it. So I like the length. It would be easy to make all kinds of hub extensions if I could machine it properly and weld it properly. So I need to find some carbon steel in the same size. Again, it's 1 3/4 raw stock, and it needs to be 1.700. There, I can get a few out of that, and I can hold it in the bandsaw. Like I say, cut it a little wide, then I'll machine it up. And I'll put this one in the other lathe and cut her down too. Obviously this one I'm just going to spot weld here and there. This one I've been welding solid. Doesn't really matter. I'm not a fan of the slip-on adapter, but it is a handy tool to check the size. And also I use it as an alignment jig when it comes time to weld it. To tack this on the end of the hub. This fits over both hubs. Holds the extension on. I tack it inside, remove it, and weld her up. I've removed some of the flange on my pan bolts. Piece of cake. I don't have to do them all. Some interfere with the pan because the pan's kind of fat, and some don't, but I don't want it positional where the person installing the pan would have to figure out which bolts go where, so I just cut them all. All day long these turkeys have been hanging around. I hope they don't hurt my big mushroom. Finally, this project is done. The pan is installed permanently. I used 1 1/4, 5/16 flange head. I reduced the flange on for 7 bolts, and for 6 bolts I used 1 1/2. Same story. Had to reduce the head. I didn't have to reduce them on the front, but I did anyway. So again, with the pan off, you're only dealing with 2 length bolts, and you can probably figure out, no matter who you are, where they go. So always thinking ahead. If you have somebody thrashing, helping you, whatever the situation, make it as easy as possible. Now I got to lift the transmission off the holder so I can actually install the shield and the under brackets. And the UPS truck came with my low dollar Motorsports pressure senders and temp sender. I ordered these Monday morning. This is Thursday afternoon, and they're here. If you're wondering what they are, you can pause and blow that up, do what you got to do. That's what I bought. I bought a couple harnesses. Bought a combo. This is converter pressure and temperature. Again, it's coming out of the cooler. Coming out of the converter before the cooler. So it's probably higher than a sump reading, but it's a number anyway. It's the only number I'm going to have, and the other one is a pressure sender just for the line pressure. That'll go on the driver's side. It'll be interesting to see in a minute whether this interferes with the shield, and I need to make a manifold and a hose for this, so we'll see. So all we can do is keep going forward. Their harnesses, pre-made harnesses, are ridiculously cheap. They're like $7. They'll go all the way up in the car. The sender comes with a pigtail you can wire in yourself, but those plug right in. So the transmission cable bracket also came in for the quarter stick, but I'm not starting over. I'm going to run that shifter with a different decal. It's a quick disconnect. Let's get at it. With the transmission in shield install position, which is fancy terminology for sitting on a block of wood, I can see this side I have the 2 bolts just stuck through the bracket holes. That I got plenty of room here. This is going to be my charge pressure and temperature sender. I bought this adapter piece that goes on 6 AN female and male, also from Low Dollar Motorsports, $7 or $8. I hate to have a lot of adapters, but that's a good connection. AN. This is the run T. This will go back to my dump valve. The line is going to go inside. There's plenty of room, and come out over here. Plenty of room to remove my governor cover and modify that, or install the one I already modified. So this side's going to be a piece of cake. Over here on the driver's side, you can see I have the transmission shield sitting on a rag so I don't scratch my paint job. I can almost start the back bolt, and I cannot start that one. The shield itself is down all the way on the transmission, which is what I wanted, because I wanted about a 1/16 more floor clearance. I had this shield on the other transmission with a stock pan, and this pan is so much thicker, everything's further down. I'm going to have to slot the bracket holes. You can't modify the shield, but I can modify the bracket holes about a 1/2 hole. And this will actually fit, so not bad. No big surprise that things don't fit. Obviously, I do not have room for my pressure sender, so I'm going to run a 1/8 inch pipe to AN fitting and a braided line back here. I'm going to have the dump valve solenoid back here anyway, so there's going to be a wire harness. I can also incorporate the harness for the line pressure sender back here, so it's going to come out under this way. There's plenty of room on the shield. If you remember, the other transmission I had the shield on had an internal brake, and it was really close to the wiring over here, so in this case, plenty of room to run a hose. And I believe I have an 1/8 inch manifold of some type that I can put the pressure sender in. Let me do some digging. Further investigation into the line pressure sender. If I had a simple 90, I think the sender could ride right there and be covered by the shield. I have the 15-foot harness, so not a problem getting to plugging it in. Again, I have enough fittings to do something like this, but it's just more connections, so the less is better. So I need to get a simple 90 in my 1,000 boxes of parts. I don't seem to have one. So I guess that's going to hold me up until I do. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video. It's getting kind of long. The next time you see all this junk, I'll be bolting it in the car. You may also notice my pan bolts come all the way through. If you remember, this case was compromised. I had to weld nuts and remove broken bolts and restore a couple threaded holes, so I wanted to use all the thread that's available, especially where they're doing a lot of work. So I ran the tap through every hole so I knew the bolt would come up through, and be careful, especially around the front pump, that they didn't go too far. You can't see it, but it's okay. So if you see the pan bolt sticking out, that is abnormal for me, but in this case, it was a must-do. Well, that's my definition of frustrating. I dedicate a lot of space to bags and boxes and shelves full of stuff, so when I'm doing something, I can just reach for it. I mean, literally thousands and thousands of parts and dollars sitting around here, and I don't have, well, what used to be a 50-cent fitting, now it'll probably cost me $5, but if I'm lucky. Actually, I should probably buy a nice anodized one, so maybe 10. But either way, the next time we see this, like I mentioned, it's going to be on the transmission jack going in the car. I already know that my dipstick clears my floorboard. I was clearing a Flexplate shield plus that and jacking it right into place, so this should be a piece of cake, and I can already see that I'm going to need new bell housing bolts because my bell housing is a lot thicker, especially the bottom one, if you can see my hand over here. I don't know if you can or not. So I'll source that also, so when I get ready to install it, I don't get stalled out again. So I appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe. It's a beautiful fall day. I hope you're enjoying yourself wherever you are in the world. So I can't believe people from all over the world watch this stuff. So I think it's awesome. Thank you. And did I say like, share, subscribe?
They tell me to do that every time.